Morning, guys. All right, so I wanted to kind of just walk you guys through the process of making a mold. You can see over here, this is some of the Iron Man stuff I've done already. This is all in solid plastic. It's already gone through this whole process I'm about to just explain to you, and been cleaned up and is good. But over here, and excuse the mess, this room is a pit. We were using it as a storage room, and I just quickly last night cleared some space in order to make this on the floor here. So I laid a drop cloth down. You'll see this PVC rack. That may come in handy depending on how this mold goes for drying it and setting it out later. So that's why I assembled that together. You'll see the various chemicals, clamps, and tools I'll need over here. But this is the piece I really want you guys to focus on for now. This is the helmet. This is my perfected helmet, or the helmet as I have it to current day. It's already solid plastic. It's already been sanded to 600 grit, wet sanded, so on, and primed. This is ready to go. You can see I already put the cut line in for taking the faceplate and the chin sections off. I can go ahead and start that now. I'm not going to. I'm going to make a mold today, and over the next couple days, because make a mold of this. I already have a mold made. That's where this came from. I made a mold, did a full plastic cast, and it came out as this, kind of. The plastic casts that come from molds are inherently ugly. They have bubbles, deformities. You got to worry about the seam line, so on. It took me weeks to get this helmet from that raw cast looking this polished. So I decided, you know what? Let me take another mold, make another mold of now this polished helmet, not the raw version, but this polished one. That way, should something, God forbid, something happen to this helmet, it gets damaged or destroyed or whatever throughout, I'm about to start cutting at it. Let's say I mess up. I can quickly, over the course of a couple hours, do another cast and get this exact same helmet at almost this exact same level back again. It was just a couple hours of work rather than a couple weeks of work. Also, let me make multiple versions. If I wanted to have, make another 10 of these and give them away or display them in various places around my house, I could. So, I'm making another mold. Now, in order to make the mold, and this is something that I have learned, you really need to take a lot of time into preparing it. Depending on the mold, depending on what you're molding, we'll need different levels of preparation. But for this guy, you'll notice this brown that goes all the way around the whole thing. Let's see if I can get you guys to see. It's a seam line, and it cuts him in half, front and back, and then goes around the entire opening. What is that? Well, first off, obviously, this is a seam. I'm gonna do this mold as a two-part mold. You're gonna do the top part is one mold. The bottom will be a separate mold. So then you put the two molds together, clamp them shut, pour the plastic interior, slosh it around, unclamp the molds, and you'll have this. So it's gonna be a two-part mold. Hence the seam. This here for the opening isn't to help with isn't a seam line. This is what I don't know if it's like I do this as an overflow line. This is to prevent spillage. So when I pour the plastic in, because the plastic is very liquid, it's the viscosity of water, so it just flows. What you need to do with the mold is get the plastic to coat the entire interior of the mold at an equal depth. That's very hard to do. Typically speaking, if I'm holding the mold like this, most of the plastic will be at the very base just because water pools at the bottom. Well, I need the water to come up to this very edge, the plastic to come up to this very edge just as thickly as back here. Otherwise, this will be very thin and bendable, flexible, and easily damaged, and the whole thing will warp and deform. Well, You also don't want it to flow out of the mold, because then you get molten plastic spilling everywhere, and then eventually solidifies. It could damage stuff. Hence, the drop cloth to help prevent that from getting in my carpets. But to further, just to further make that a little bit harder for me to make mistakes and spill it out, I put this seam line in, this lip, this overflow lip. That way, I can get the plastic to come up to the very edge of the helmet without coming up to the very edge of the mold. The mold will end all the way out here. The helmet will end in here. So I just want the plastic to come as close to it as I can, but I don't have to worry about getting literally right up to the edge. I also, all the open areas on the mother piece that I'm going to be using, I seal up with plastic as well, and with modeling clay as well, to prevent the silicone from just seeping through and dripping through that. Now, the silicone that I use is Mold Max 30. It's made by Smooth On. You can get it in a variety of different sizes. This is one of their smaller sizes because I don't need a lot, and I just had a little bit left kind of sitting around. A lot of different retailers will sell this. I order it online. This mixes by weight. You can see there, 100 to 10. This is part A. So I use 100 grams of this and mix it with 10 grams of part B. Now, to measure out the grams, you do kind of want to get this as close and accurate as you can. I mean, it's forgiving, but still, I use just a cheap gram scale. So pour out, measure out however much of this you're going to use. I'll probably do 200 to 300 grams of it for each half for the first layer in a mixing bowl. Add to it 10 parts of this, so it would be 20 to 30 grams depending on how much I use. Mix it all together and literally pour it on top. You can use a paintbrush and just brush it to make sure that it gets into everything, but it's fairly viscous. It will flow and coat the smallest crevices as best as it can. You let that dry for a few hours. I typically let it go for a full day. Come back and then do it again. You will need 2 to 3 coats per side, but the second and third coats, not only will you mix part A and part B together, you will also add Thivex, which is a thickener. This makes it less viscous and more the consistency of, maybe peanut butter, or somewhere between peanut butter and mayonnaise, depending on how much of this you put in. So that will let you literally paste it on thick batches to build up depth and weight, because like I said, the first coat is going to go on very thin, very viscous. It's going to just be trying to suck out and get all the details, and then you thicken it out with a couple coats using Thivex. Once you do that, and I'm just talking through this whole thing now, but once you do that, you remove the seam line. You do not remove the overflow lip. And you pour it, you're making the silicone right up to the edge of the overflow lip. Do the whole thing. But you remove the seam line once you've got one side done. Turn it over. And you'll do the exact same thing on the other side after you coat, because there'll be a new seam here. It won't be this clay anymore. The silicone will have created a new seam, because all this will be molded. I use Vaseline, petroleum jelly, to coat the edge of the silicone, so that the next half, the bottom half, when I turn it over and I start doing making the mold for the next half, doesn't bond with this front half, because then that defeats the purpose. And then after, once you've done that, you've got your silicone mold, then you make the exterior mother mold, which I'll talk through once we get to there. So hopefully this was beneficial. Like I said, just a quick run through. It's very simple. Scoop out 100 parts of this and 10 parts of that, mix it together, and pour it on top.